Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
If you know the truth, should you always speak it? Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, beautiful, and true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey, and we are going into our third work of fiction. But as I clearly stated, I shouldn't say stated, it really wasn't a statement. It was in my exchange with the previous author, last week's author. I didn't say fiction, but I did say myth is a vehicle for truth. And we have the same situation here. This is a story. It's a work of fiction, but there are truths in it and a number of implications, which we will get into real soon. So, our guest is Thomas Curry, author of Miss Sally's Son, published by Ignatius Press. And we thank Ignatius for the review copy, and Susan Nutt, the publicist, for coordinating this conversation. Thomas Curry, welcome to the 13th Apostle.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Okay, so Miss Sally's Son, you heard my opening question. If we know the truth, should we always speak it? Now, I know you know why I'm asking that question. Obviously, our audience doesn't. What's your first reaction to that question? Let's pretend I'm one of your children. I'm 10 years old. Say, hey, Daddy, should I always tell the truth? Now, what do you say? Remember, both hands are in front of you, okay? You can't have one hand behind your back with your fingers.
Probably if it's my child and they're 10 years old, the answer will be yes. Because I don't think a 10-year-old is ready to have the nuanced answer that probably, is generally going to be given to that question if you're talking with another adult. And I think that whether you disclose the truth or not to another person, a truth that you know, certainly is complicated because it depends upon what you anticipate the consequences of that disclosure will be. So I think that's a very difficult question. It's a question, I think, like all the questions that we have as Catholic Christians, is a question that in the particular circumstance, when you're talking about two mature intellects, the answer would be discovered in prayer if it's not obvious. And sometimes it's not obvious.
The answer to whether you should tell.
Whether you should or should not.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're like, what was attributed to Henry Kissinger, our former Secretary of State during the Nixon administration. He purportedly said, I won't lie, but I won't tell the entire truth. Whether or not he said that, it seems to me like there's some wisdom in that. Again, part of it, as you said, is complicated. My theology mentor, that was his favorite expression. Anytime I proposed something, we were talking about saying, Tom, it's complicated. That has covered so much ground for me.
Yeah, it's also, I know that I said it, but it's also an answer that I hate.
But it's not really an answer, right? It's a response.
Yes, and like the waffling on whether or not you would always tell the truth, it covers numerous sins, right? By saying that it's complicated.
Yeah, I've never had a priest in the confessional say, okay, or I've never said, Father, it's complicated,
I'm sure that's been said, though, many times.
Oh, my gosh.
Our priest, who I dearly love, our current priest, who I dearly love, we're in a small place, so we're very blessed. He said, I don't want to know all the details. Just give me the 3,000-foot view, give me
He just wanted the headline. No, he didn't want the article.
exactly.
That serendipitously, providentially, whenever brings us to one part of your book where the main character, uh, Jack, he goes into, so he's a seriously lapsed Catholic, but he finds himself in church at Mass, knows enough, right, to not go up and receive the Eucharist, but to receive a blessing. He's got the form down. He's got his arms crossed over his chest. And then he goes to confession right after that. Now that's a nice parish where the priests are available for confession right after Mass. I thought, wow, that's very, he took advantage of, or properly so, of that opportunity. His confession was complicated, but the priest, I think, was a priest that everybody should have. Hopefully everybody would want. Perhaps not, because the priest didn't do something in that confessional experience, and he did do something that was really good. So it's a sacrament. Did Jack receive the sacrament?
No, no, no. He received the blessing, he didn't receive absolution because he told the priest that he didn't believe. And, the priest explained to him that, he couldn't grant absolution to someone who didn't believe. And, if you're talking about the time when he went in Germany, I think is what you're talking about. The episode where he went to the cathedral in Germany. Yeah. But the priest did point him towards C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, to read the book, because it was clear that Jack, the protagonist, was struggling with, lack of this loss of his faith. And the priest was trying to help with that. But he didn't grant him absolution.
He gave a great demonstration of pastoral care.
Yes. Yes.
I have a dear friend who's a deacon. He actually works at EWTN headquarters. And we've had many lively discussions over the years. And so one time it was about confession, and he greatly minimized the importance of the pastoral part. He said, the sacrament is the sacrament. And I vigorously disagreed, because the sacrament is the object, and it's the objective reality it's like, you don't know that, until science discovered it, we didn't know that sunlight was important for the production of vitamin D inside us, but it was still happening whether or not we were aware of it, or before we discovered that, we made a discovery. So the sacraments have their effect, but there's nothing like the sacrament of confession or reconciliation, where the pastoral part is so important. Even though the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, we go up in our procession and we receive it. There's no pastoral work given by the priest,
Right.
as there is in the sacrament of confession. So he didn't get the sacrament because the priest was truthful. And and to our earlier point, he gave the truth to, they exchanged truths, but as you said, he got the blessing from the church. And it's very interesting the way you wrote this, leading up to that. There was more than one conversation about, or scene, whatever, about confession. I mean, a big premise of the story is a confession. Jack's mother and whatnot. And Jack was being truthful, saying, well, to Moni, short for Monica, right?
Right.
That when we're going to go back a little bit. I want you to give a little summary, and then so that'll lead us to Moni. But she wants him to become faithful again.
Right. Moni is a cradle Catholic who had her issues also, but her Catholic faith is, intrinsic to her being. Though she spent some time in college going with friends to Protestant churches where she found a lot of faith and spirituality and joy, she is Catholic to the core, and she she just couldn't get by without the Eucharist. And I think I just wanted to say one thing about your friend who was, insistent on the act of the sacramental act rather than the pastoral act and the confessional. And sometimes I think priests take that position as sort of a pushback against the idea that the pastoral part is all that matters. But as you said, it's clearly not all that matters. The sacrament, in persona Christi, the priest acting in persona Christi is the final act that allows you to be forgiven. He's granting you what Christ allowed him to grant you. Those you forgive, I will forgive. Those sins you retain will be retained, right? I mean, and in the apostolic tradition, that's your priest in the confessional.
Dan, this was many years ago when we were kind of early on in doing this, and he made a reference to a good confession. Now, part of it is because it's my nature. I like to, if somebody, some things I accept, other things I just won't accept, and I want to push back a little bit and stir the pot a little bit. Right?
Yeah, so do we all.
And so
it's more fun to stir the pot.
Exactly, and especially if you don't have to drink it or eat it,
Yeah, exactly.
So I said, well, what's a good confession? Tell me, is there a bad confession? Have you had a bad confession? Now, they're both faithful Catholics and know that the sacrament is the sacrament. But I know that Dan was talking about the pastoral part with the good confession, because either way, your sin, if you went in and you did everything properly, so everything was done properly, you're absolved and you're now reconciled with God. But what does that mean in terms of, and you write this, let's see if I can find it real quickly. Well,
I think you're probably referring to when he's having this discussion with the priest David Odemeyer at the monastery.
So should he assert a belief in God if he doesn't believe? That's Jack's makes a reference to that being hypocritical. So it reminded me of Christopher Hitchens that I saw in I don't know whether it was an interview or debate, the now deceased atheist, well-known atheist, intellectual, highly intellectual. And he said, if there is a God, then I have this brain. I use my brain and I've evaluated everything the way I understand to how to evaluate things in life. And I don't believe. Now, would God want me to just say I believe so I could get in through the pearly gates? No. I mean, so that was one thing that he said. Maybe there are plenty others, but that was one thing I remember him saying that with which I fully agree. And I think that's what I'm certain that's what you meant Jack to mean.
Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing that Christ didn't like, it was hypocrites. Right?
Well said.
He definitely didn't like hypocrites. But Jack refuses to be hypocritical. But Moni won't have him unless he is Catholic or Christian at least. And so he acknowledges that he has a very deep psychological reason for experiencing a conversion and making his conversion perhaps more suspect, and because it fulfills a need of his own rather than being independent of that. So but Jack isn't going to say that he believes when he doesn't. But the priest, David Odemeyer's point to him is, but you want to know. And this is what I've said to those that I love that aren't of the faith at this point, is that if there is a God, don't you want to know that? You want to know, and you're searching, you want to know. So how can it hurt to get down on your knees and say, Lord, if you exist, help me find you? And the thing that hurts in that is pride. Pride hurts in that because, as Jack said, I mean, you feel absurd. What am I doing? This is an absurd thing for me to do, to get down on my knees and pray to a God that I don't believe in. And David Odermeyer's point to Jack when he's telling him to do this, to pray the prayer of, I believe, help my unbelief, when he's telling him to pray that prayer, he's telling him, you don't have to worry about whether God is fooled by your fake piety. The Lord knows perfectly well. You can't lie to God, okay? You can't be a hypocrite in front of God because he knows the truth. So you can get down on your knees and say, I believe, help my unbelief. And, if you do that sincerely, I believe that you will find God. That's what I think. But, and I don't think that you can do that hypocritically. And that's what the priest told Jack. You can't do that hypocritically because the Lord already knows. He knows where you are, exactly where you are.
And I think Jack was honest with himself in saying that. So give a brief summary of your book, of Miss Sally's son, and we'll get to some other the issues that your story brings up.
So Jack is raised by a single mother, and he doesn't know who his father is. And he's very successful, very driven. His mother is very successful as a businesswoman. And he becomes a lawyer, becomes an international lawyer, is working overseas. And his mother dies suddenly of an unusual cardiac issue called Takotsubo's cardiomyopathy, which doesn't matter, but it's just different. It's an unusual cardiac disease. Anyways, his mother dies, and he suddenly and unexpectedly, when she's young, she's only in her early 50s, and so he comes home from Germany where he works, and he's settling her estate. And in doing so, he finds this diary, basically, that she's left him, this long letter that she's left him, telling him who his father is and the circumstances of her own childhood and of their life together and how she became successful as a businesswoman. And then this is all quite a shock to him, but Jack learns that his father is in fact a Catholic priest and monk and a famous spiritual writer. And so this raises all kinds of questions for him, like, how could my father be this person and not have anything to do with me for my whole life? I mean, this seems like the ultimate, ecclesial hypocrisy. Well, he goes on a journey to find out who his father is. When he returns home to settle his mother's estate, his mother, because he's been gone for so long, living his own life and kind of ignoring her, his mother has met friends, and they've become dear friends, and one of them lives with her, and then that friend's daughter moved in with her, and she had a child, and so the child moved in with her too. So when Jack returns to help settle his mother's affairs, he finds this family living in his house, the house that he grew up in, and they sort of become his new family. And Moni, the young woman, he falls in love with her, but she falls in love with him, but she won't take their relationship any further because she's trying to raise her child as a faithful Christian, and she doesn't want um, her her significant other. She doesn't want to be married to someone who doesn't believe. So, anyways, Jack has to go through this journey of discovering who his father is, and going out to the monastery and finding papers that his father left for him, and also in the process, rediscovering his own faith. That's pretty much what the book is about.
So the dilemma that I was inferring at the beginning is about truth, about hypocrisy and whatnot. Does, especially true for someone in the fields of, we'll call it the field, or living a life of faith, but there's a big sin, uh, so that calls into question their character, their personal morality. Are they do as I say, not as I do? Obviously, as a Catholic Church has dealt with massive scandals, sex scandals. And so I can think of a big debate when I was in school in the theology program about this, at the time, very well-known theologian, not a Catholic theologian, published, highly regarded all over the world for giving presentations. And but all of a sudden, women came forward with their complaints about abuse. And you are a physician. You said a retired physician, but you're a physician nonetheless. And does a serious moral failing mean that you still can't help someone heal? You can't practice your craft of medicine. And I think, unfortunately, we got just a few minutes left, but I want to see if you can really get into that. What does that mean because of what he found out about his father?
Well, I think the answer to that is no. I mean, I think that all of us have significant failings. Um, they're not all, perhaps as significant as unacknowledged illegitimate children, or in this case, he actually he wanted the child to be aborted, which didn't happen. But so they're not that significant. But, the Lord is, all these things can be forgiven. We can all be forgiven. And that's why he died on the cross.
But if you go to
I,
forgiveness, though, right?
yes, yes. And I think the other point is that really, truly to be forgiven requires repentance, requires true repentance. There's no forgiveness if you can't go to confession, tell a priest all the things you've done wrong and plan to go out, and do them all over again. And now that you've got those all wiped away, and go in every week, maybe like a mafioso or something, and plan to get cleaned up. I don't think it works that way. I
I
don't think
agree with
that's
you.
what the Lord had in mind. But I think it is possible. It is very possible for people who have damaged lives to help other people. And sometimes it's required, I think, because they understand the damage that someone else may be suffering better than the rest of us. So, this is why you see so many, I think, drug rehab counselors who are themselves prior addicts, right? And um, I think the answer to that question is yes. And also, not only is the answer yes, we can do it, we should do it, right? We should do it. We
Well
should be
said.
helping others,
Well said.
regardless of whether we have our own failings.
And your story is is filled with the helping of others. It really is a very good story. There's so many layers to it, the way the characters are developed, the help, the Christian charity, not putting those as a heading. Christian charity is throughout your book in the search for truth. So we got to wrap it up. But Tom Curry, author of Miss Sally's Son, I really enjoyed this conversation. I know our audience will enjoy the book. It's a very, very good story. And I thank you for writing it and for appearing on the 13th Apostle.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
WQPHradio.org, Marianne, Jean, James, the great support crew, speaking of helping. Thank you for support, friends out there in the audience. Buy the book, Miss Sally's Son by Ignatius Press. Thank you, Ignatius. Thank you, Susan Nutt. Thank you, Tom Curry. Good to meet you, Tom. God bless you.
Good to meet you, Tom.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?